Hey guys, and thank you so much for joining me again today for another episode of Talking South Carolina. Now, we got a good one for you today, and I hope I can understand everything she says. We have Queen Quet, who is the Chieftess of the Gullah Geechee Nation. She's also the founder of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. We are going to find out all about what that is about and their 25th anniversary coming up. And so hang on just a second and I will bring her on.
This episode of the Talking South Carolina podcast has been brought to you in part by HomeMattersSC.com, professional real estate services and marketing in the Midlands of South Carolina for people who want more. And now she's a realtor by day and a podcaster by night. Here's your host of the Talking South Carolina podcast, Angela Barrett.
Well, thank you so much for being with me today. It is such an honor.
Glad it's for deal with her.
Yeah, I was going to say, I probably should have told you, if you're going to talk real deep, what I call the Gullah Geechee, I am probably not going to be able to understand you, which is terrible.
Look, yeah, I'm just like a bunch of people with in South Carolina. You don't even know all of what we the crack we teeth and say. All right, man, I don't know anything like that. But I just want you to know I can't speak your language as well, Angela. I can help you out.
Well, that is one of my questions. I will first give you a story, and then I'll tell you the question. I'll give you the question. So, my second grade kindergarten teacher loved to speak Geechee. She would read all of our stories, and so the more that you hear it, the more you can understand it. But when you haven't heard it in a long time, and I remember trying to read, she would read Burr Rabbit, Burr Bear in that, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But so now my question is, how do you learn to understand / read it? Is there an organization, a place you can go to do that?
Well, first of all, let's cover this part.
Okay.
Gullah is the language itself, which is what you heard me speaking. Geechee is essentially a pidgin or a dialect of the Gullah language. So that's why people who speak English, and American English in particular, because that's different all over the world too, English is, you may start to feel like you understand it if people speak Geechee around you. But more often not, if they are fluent in Gullah, that's not going to just happen. And so whether it's Gullah or Geechee, it's largely oral. So therefore, you don't find a lot of it in writing unless it was some academic or usually some non-Gullah Geechee person that thought they had a hold on it, that tried to scribe it in more of a phonetic way so that English speakers could try to access it. But what I found over the years is a lot of that stuff is wrong. It's written incorrectly because that's not how we would say it. And we can immediately figure out that, oh, we know whoever wrote this wasn't Gullah. And so we don't say, yeah, because we would have said this. Or this word here doesn't even exist in Gullah just because it exists in English. So that's been a thing. But now a lot of what we see, because, we're texting now, right? And posting on social media, the way to try to connect to a lot of native Gullah Geechees who, a lot of them, the younger generation, speak Geechee. They don't speak Gullah because that's the world they've grown up to in. It's really integrated and they are more exposed to English most of the time. So it makes it more accessible if we just phonetically put things out there. So there's no school, there's no one organization doing that. There's no quote unquote standardized way for anybody to write Gullah Geechee. Is still an oral language. And so definitely it's something we take pride in having. And it's always fun to hear people say to us, they're reading it to us. Like you mentioned that story and we're sitting there going, what? Yeah. Say, let me have that. Let me see what you're looking at. And one of us will read it and the whole intonations and inflections, everything changes. And it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the book certainly wasn't written that way. It was just the way that she was read it to us. Yes. Yeah. It was great. So tell us first, the Gullah Geechee Nation. Tell us about that, because that's different than the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, which
Absolutely. So
tell me.
let me tell you. So the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition is older than the Gullah Geechee Nation. The Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition actually will be 30 years old next year. The Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition I founded, and it was the first organization in world history to have the words Gullah and Geechee together in anything. So if you went to do any research, you would have never found Gullah / Geechee, or some people put a dash. It was never meant to be a dash. So the vision that I had, anything I looked up, I'm a computer scientist and mathematician by degree. So I was using the internet before everybody else, one might say, next to the government, because the government had it first. And so when they started releasing it so that the general public could use it, I was an early user. So one of the things I wanted to do was to find out what was on this thing. What is this internet thing? You know, cast nets are my thing, right? I'm Gullah Geechee. So what's the internet? What we gonna catch with this net? So I wondered, had they caught any Gullah stuff? Had they caught any Geechee stuff? And I had to put those words in separately. Like we would say into the search engine, if you put Gullah Geechee, nothing. You put Gullah, you got maybe one page. You put in Geechee, you probably got 2 pages. And that was it. Versus now, you could be there for months if you put those words in separately. And so the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition was a vision that I had because there was so much displacement of native Gullah Geechees happening from the Sea Islands between Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida. So I said, well, I got to do something about this. So I talked to elders that I brought together at a conference on my home island, St. Helena Island, to the historic Penn Center. And it was amazing because I got people from Florida there, and North Carolina and South Carolina, and they're working in the room. And I'm thinking, I need to introduce these elders. And they're working and going, hey, girl, long time, how are they doing? I'm like, wait a minute, they know each other? Oh, and they largely had known each other from the civil rights movement and stuff. Yep, and hadn't seen each other since that time frame. And now we're into the early 90s. So now I'm saying, well, wait a minute, we need to keep everybody together, because now there's that much more pressure to hold on to our culture, hold on to our land. They were like, well, go and do that. And you go on and put the organization together and we'll just support what you're doing. And I'm looking like, well, wait, I wanted y'all to be part of the organization. Y'all my elders. They looking like, girl, go ahead. So I went on and established the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. And interestingly enough, Angela, I got more people across the United States and the world that got so excited about this organization and something that was going to help them learn about what that is. Some of them had heard about, we had a language and they didn't really understand it, like you mentioned, or someone read them something. They were like, where'd you get it from? And they were like, I got it from somewhere in South Carolina. And they were like, well, where does this come from? So now every day of my life since I founded the organization, I get online and I post things to educate people about our culture. So one of the things that continued was the land displacement. So educating people that if we don't have the land, we won't have the culture. As I always tell people, the land are we, and we are the land. The land are we family, and the waterway that we bloodline, and thing like that. And so with the waters being our bloodline and this land being our family, we have to save it. You don't want it destroyed. And so that now led to me being invited to the United Nations. And that connection going to the United Nations is where I started being taught by the International Human Rights Association for American Minorities about human rights law. I didn't know also there were all these elders that now were trying to figure out a way to bring all these Gullah Geechee people together to hold on to their land and to continue to teach their cultural heritage to their children. And here it is. I meet who is now Elder Carleytown out of Charleston. She contacts me. I meet Dr. Yusuf and Clyde, God bless the dead, who is a law professor, but a native of South Carolina. All right, that now lives in Canada. And they're saying, with what you're doing with the UN, you do realize y'all have your human right to self-determination. You can stand on that. So the Colleytown Gullah Geechee People Foundation led a petition and a vote that took place for one whole year from 1999, the first time I went to the United Nations and made world history again as the first Gullah Geechee to ever speak before the Human Rights Commission in Geneva, Switzerland. They were voting as I was heading over there, and they had this vote go on all the way until July 2nd, 2000, when I was installed and elected as the head funding body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. So I'm the official head of state for the Gullah Geechee Nation, the first person to do that. So the Gullah Geechee Nation is our own nation, like the United States is a nation. But in the nation, we have numerous organizations. So the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, albeit that it's older than the nation, it actually is an organization in the Gullah Geechee Nation, just like the Gullah Geechee Angel Network, the Gullah Geechee Cultural Community Trust that's down in Florida. There are a plethora of them. And so even Penn Center that I mentioned is a nonprofit. It's an organization, although it's a historic site. So there are a lot of organizations in the Gullah Geechee Nation, but the Gullah Geechee Nation is a nation, and I'm the head of state. We have a Wisdom Circle Council of Elders, which is kind of my cabinet, and I call it my right hand. And then I have an Assembly of Representatives. That's my left hand. And I always say this, they could be kin to, if you want to try to think of it in the U.S., you might say, oh, they're like the Congress. But I always say, but they behave better.
I love it. Absolutely. Let's back this up for 1 second. I'm going to let you explain the difference and where Gullah came from and where Geechee, I mean, because they are two different things, as you said. Tell everybody what it is. I know it, other than a language, who speaks it, where it's from, and for both of those.
Yes. So a lot of times when people are coming down here and things like that at South Kakalaki now and the Yeti people like that, they show that, they first time they say, what that? Right? And we say, it's Gullah. And they're like, then what is that? Well, Gullah, like you said, is not only a language, it's the people. And it's the people who speak that language. And that language came into existence because of the enslavement of numerous African ethnic groups during chattel enslavement. So you had Igbo, Mandinka, Malinke, Yoruba, Gola, Gizi, Mendi, Temni, Ifiki, Ibibio, and numerous others who they put together, they amalgamated their languages into what is now known as the Gullah language. And you got the word Gullah because at first, the Africans that were being kidnapped and brought over to this region now that we call the Low Country and is the Gullah Geechee Nation were from Angola. So when they were sold at auctions, their name got bastardized into Gullah. It just got cut off. You know, us Southerners, we'll cut it off and give you a nickname and all that. So they cut off Angola and would say, we have a cargo of Gullah for sale. So that word started being used over here because of that. And then when they started realizing that those folks are always in the uprisings, somehow they were always engaged, they said, oh no, we're going to ban the importation of those. And they started shipping in another group whose name was Gullah, G-O-L-A, from the Windward Coast, Rice Coast region, which is why in this area, we are so connected and Gullah Geechees are so connected to rice because that was the rice growing region. Also in that region were the Keedsee people or the Geechee people, which is where Geechee comes from. So when I mention those uprisings, when you think about 1739 and the Stoner Rebellion happened down here on the coast between Johns Island and then going over to what's now Hollywood Ravenel, where there was a store called the Hutchison store right there. And there's a marker, a South Carolina state marker exists right on that property now about this rebellion, this uprising, right? People call it Cato's Rebellion, Cato's Uprising. Those were Angolan leaders. A man that got renamed Jimmy was Cato. And when he led these men to leave Johns Island with our Bato boats and row across to Highway 17, which was called the King's Highway then, And they broke in that store. They got guns and armaments and they'd already made swords and things because they were blacksmiths. And they rose up. Some of them ended up down at Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose, or Fort Mose, all the way in Florida. Some got killed along the way. Some didn't make it. But the result of their action became the slave codes that got written that said no black people were to read or write, no black people were to own land, no black people were to play the drums or any of that, no Africans, right? And no three or more Africans were to gather together without an overseer present. That overseer had to be an Anglo person, a white person. So if we're not writing legally from 1740 until the end of the Civil War, it's not legal for black people to read and write. Then when you start to write something like Gullah, it changes from Gola to Gullah over here. If you were to write Geechee, you don't write Gidzi. You don't write Kizee, Kissee. You write Geechee, Geechee. And look on until N and no I in Geechee if it a we. Okay? Because we see people writing with an I. No. As a Gullah Geechee person, there are no I's in the spelling of Geechee either. So you end up with people who are Gullah or Geechee people or Gullah and Geechee people. And the reason that God showed me that when I founded the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition and I wrote anything, promoted anything, put the words together is because socioanthropologists had divided us. So we needed to show our unity. So as a computer scientist, that slash is something we work with. As a mathematician, that dash looks like a minus sign. Too much have been taken away from us already. So I knew don't use a dash. Use a slash because of the unified Gullah Geechee. But now my handles on social media are just Gullah Geechee. I don't need the slash. So it's unified anyway, right? So that's how the origin of those came to be, but Gullah stands for, and Geechee are the people, and then Gullah by itself is a language, and Geechee by itself is a dialect or pidgin of the Gullah language.
Well, thank you for that, because it is, and it can be, I tried reading as much as I could, but you can get very bogged down in it because it goes back so far. The history is like, I'm confused now. To do this again another day and read it again because it goes back a long way.
A long way. And you talk about a long distance in terms of miles, because when you're talking about between Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida, encompassing all the Sea Islands, and then 30 to 35 miles into the mainland to the St. Johns River, you have a massive area that things have been written about, from the 15, 16, 17, 1800s up to today. So like you said, yeah, you can be there all day, and it doesn't, and for a lifetime, and still learn more. And then it doesn't help that these guys many times weren't too creative, right, Angela, where we have like Port Royal as a town and it sits on Port Royal Island. We have Beaufort, South Carolina, and we got Beaufort, North Carolina that's spelled the same. Right?
Absolutely.
That doesn't help sometimes either when you're trying to read through historical documents.
That's right. That's right. So now, you have a 25th anniversary coming up of the Gullah Nation, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So there are y'all going to have some big events. Tell us about that and what's coming up.
Well, actually, we already kicked it off. We
kicked
it off to open Black History Month on February 1st. We got everybody to come on down to St. Helena Island to our Reconstruction Era National Historical Park. So we were in the Darrell Hall building, which is part of the historic Penn Center National Landmark Historic District. And we had people come from all over the place. We had people from all four of the states we've been talking about, and a lot of people, of course, from South Kakalaki. So we had a number of counties represented, and we had our first Gullah Geechee Create artwork showcase. And so people had African-American and Gullah Geechee artists had upcycled marine debris and turned it into artwork. And so that was the first showcase, and we're having another one that's going to be in Conway on February 22nd, and then on March 29th, we'll be in North Charleston. We'll actually be at the North Charleston Library. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what the audiences are like for that, because so many people love Gullah Geechee art. And so that's become its own genre in and of itself. But throughout the year, we have a number of other fun things too. So I'm a dancer, self-taught dancer. I love dancing. Many people know I sing. And so we could not do this without a celebration of Gullah Geechee art and artistry. And so for the first time, we're going to go to Myrtle Beach to a Black-owned theater called the Asher Theater. And we'll be there the first weekend of April with a Gullah Geechee grown folk getaway, we call it, for the whole weekend. And
that sounds like fun.
It's going to be fun. And that's Saturday from 11 to 2. We're going to be at the Asher Theater with our celebration of art and artistry. So sweetgrass, basketry, quilting. My mom and I still sew quilts by hand. And there's going to be a lot of music. So you're going to have Southern Soul. You're going to have R&B, award-winning R&B singer out of Somerville, Marcus Allen. You're going to have St. Helena's own Bessie Nabnett and the For the Funk of It band. And so with speaking Gullah, we have Bridget Frazier out of Bluffton. She's going to be there with Gullah Geechee food. We have Fried Daddy out of Charleston. He's going to be there with Gullah Geechee food. So all that's going to go on. So you can look at it like a brunch lunch celebration. And then that's going to be a big kind of keystone of our anniversary. And then that evening at 7 will be the Motown show. So people will have time between the two shows to kind of just go out, enjoy some other things, go refresh themselves, relax at the hotel, and then come on back. And then the other big thing we do every year is Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week. So we will launch it the last Saturday in July at Historic Penn Center at noon. And we usually say advertise noon to 3. We haven't been able to get them people out of there at 3 o'clock. Okay. Everybody's there having so much fun. It's the Gullah Geechee family reunion that happens every year, and it launches Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week, which goes through to the following Sunday. And we have events up and down the coast that whole week. Every evening there's stuff online, there's stuff in person. So we have a plethora of events. So if folks don't want to keep up, they can just follow GullahGeecheeNation.com. Just go in there, put the email in there, and then they'll always get updates. And then if there's social media people, like I said, we're at Gullah Geechee on Instagram and on X still for a minute. As we are on TikTok, we're Gullah Geechee Nation on TikTok, and we're Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook. And so if they follow there, they'll keep up with all the other events that are happening all in between. So we're going to have a good time.
Oh, yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. Absolutely. Now, if people want to be more involved and or get involved, how do they do that?
I would love for them to become members of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. And like I said in the beginning, you do not have to be a native Gullah Geechee. You can just be someone who loves this culture, wants to see it thrive, wants to see the cultural heritage continue. If they go to gullahgeechee.biz, they can join on there and then become a member. And that way you're involved with all kinds of activities. When we're doing these marine debris cleanups, when we're having just fun, and then when we're having a lot of our educational sessions as well, you get the information before other people even do. And we're always posting to you to get engaged and really be a part of all the civic work that we do as well. There's a lot of environmental meetings we hold every year. We have our Coastal Cultures Conference every year here on St. Helena. And this year we're even going over to Edisto Island in March. So there's a lot of things that the members participate in, and they're actually all over the world. We have members throughout the Gullah Geechee Nation and supporters that are all over the world, and that's been the case for 29 years that we're coming up on.
Now, you've written several books. Let's talk about those. You've got the African Seeds in the Winds. Tell me about that.
So it was interesting because the first book that I ever published was a book. It came about because, first of all, I did plays, and I did a play called A Geechee Girl's Escape. And it was about the Underground Railroad, but how it always started in the South and then people ran. It never just started in Canada or in the North. It started here. So we would educate people about Gullah Geechee culture, and part of it was drama and the other part was a lecture. So people would come to this, and I brought it to Penn Center's Heritage Day one time and sold out the show, full house at Brick Baptist Church. And so then people were like, they loved this show, but people after the show would say, well, I need a history book from you. And I would sell other people's history books, but they were like, this is not your book. I need a book from you. Right. So I was like, okay, but I'm also a poet. So my brother and I put together a poetry book called Brother and Sister Heart to Heart. So the first year that I did this play at Penn Center, I had a line of people that wouldn't leave the church for over an hour because I'm autographing the book. But there's a page in the book, and I would write a poem based on their name right there while they were there, and then sign it. And my brother would sign it, and then they take the book. So people in the line would see them leaving and say, oh, let me see your book. Hey, that's not a history book. I want a history book. So I was like, so you don't want to buy this book? I'll buy that book, but I want a history book.
Right.
Okay, that'll take a little longer to write. Oh, so I was like, okay, God is really pushing me. Go ahead and start writing history books instead of just history articles, because I had been published writing articles. So it was like, okay, great, let's do the book. So, of course, my mother said charity begins at home and then goes abroad. So the first volume in the series called Africa Seeds in the Winds of the Diaspora is St. Helena's Serenity. So each volume is about Gullah Geechee history. So volume 1 tells you about St. Helena Island. Then volume 2, Garden and Smilepoint, is about Beaufort County itself. Then we go into cotton, rice, and indigo with From We Sold to the Soil. And then I did a compilation of things called 365, 366, so that you could learn a little bit of Gullah Geechee history every day of the year. And then I have Charleston in the Islands, tells you about Charleston County. And then we also have for Our Place for We, which is telling you about the incorporated areas throughout the Gullah Geechee Nation. And then I have several other anthologies, We Be Gullah Geechee, The Legacy of Evo Landing, and so forth. But that series of books tells you the Gullah Geechee perspective on the history here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. So I have another volume of that series coming out this year. And then I have 3 children's books that are already out as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to start. I mean, kind of like my question, how do you learn, not necessarily the language, but I mean, the whole history, because you sort of gotten it broken down where you don't go online and go, holy moly. It can be overwhelming.
Yes,
That's a good place to start. Or the African Seeds in the Winds series. That's a great place to start.
And most people do start there or with the Legacy of Evo Landing. So people really, really intrigued by the linguistics, then they'll get Legacy of Evo Landing, because we do have a section where we have Gullah in the pages, but then in the little margin area on the side, we have English for some of it. And so people love that. But then my latest book, which is Gullah Geechee Blessing Upon the Sea, the children's book that I thought was for children, for more buying it for themselves than for the kids. Sure. They love it because I wrote the whole thing in Gullah Geechee, the whole thing. And so just like a novella set that I came out with in 2020, I wrote the whole thing in Gullah Geechee. And so people love getting those. And I've learned that a lot of the new generation, a younger generation of Gullah Geechees, it's more accessible for them because maybe the elders who spoke the language fluently have passed on or were ashamed to tell them and to teach them, so they didn't learn it at home the way I did, because it is something you have to learn from living it. You have to be there, speaking it, learning it, being a part of it, similar to how when you were in school and you heard those stories read to you, it made you remember that.
And, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and treasure it. But if nobody does it, then you lose it.
That's right. That's right. Well, that is fascinating. I think I could probably talk about this all day. Again, it brings just back, like you said, those childhood memories, second grade, so much. And so when I found out that you had agreed to come on, I was like, yay.
To talk about South Carolina, I was like, oh, I want to talk about South Carolina. Let's go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. And I look forward to keeping up with all the social media platforms that you guys have and your website, which is what I'm looking at now, which is where I found all the books. And the very lengthy awards and acclamations and everything that y'all just have to go on yourself and see it. It's a lot. She's done a lot, and I am honored that you're here today.
I'm honored to be here, especially during Black History Month. This is really a treasured time for me, and I appreciate being able to make history while talking about South Carolina today.
South Carolina.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stand up, listen, y'all. Epiphany, roots deep in the soil, Gullah history. Queen Quet coming regal in her stride. Chieftess leading Gullah, Geechee mover of the tide. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah, Geechee nation, unity seeking. From the shores of Carolina to the Georgia line, with culture flowing, ancient and divine. Queen Quet holding it, mighty and grand. Voices of ancestors echo through the land. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking. Gullah Geechee strong, tradition never fade. In the rhythm of the heart, legacy be made. Queen Quet walk with wisdom, loud and proud. Lifting up a nation, handling the crowd. Island talk, sweet like the sea breeze. Songs of the old days floating through the trees. Queen Quet, hold the banner high above. Uniting we clan with respect and love. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking. From the shores of Carolina to the Georgia line, we culture flowing, ancient and divine. Queen Quet holding it, mighty and grand. Voices of ancestors echo through the land. From the shores of Carolina to the Georgia line, we culture flowing, ancient and divine. Queen Quet holding it, mighty and grand. Voices of ancestors echo through the land. From the shores of Carolina to the Georgia line, we culture flowing, ancient and divine. Queen Quet holding it, mighty and grand. Voices of ancestors echo through the land. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking. Gullah Geechee strong, tradition never fade. In the rhythm of their heart, legacy be made. Queen Quet walk with wisdom, loud and proud. Lifting up a nation, handling the crowd. Island talk, sweet like the sea breeze. Songs of the old days floating through the trees. Queen Quet, hold the banner high above. Lifting up our nation, handling the crowd. Island talk, sweet like the sea breeze. Songs of the old days floating through the trees. Queen Quet, hold that banner high above. You high above. Uniting we clan with respect and love in the crowd. Stand up, here come Queen Quet. She be the Chieftess, never forget. Guiding with people, true like a beacon. In the Gullah Geechee nation, unity seeking.